Something I've always found difficult during my film journey was discovering a vampire film that I genuinely enjoyed. There's so many movies out there that tackle those pale, limber homies that the vampire movie has inherently become a genre of its own.
It's true, the market is becoming saturated.
Enough that we've got a vampire film set in every other genre out there. We've even got a vampire historical biopic. All historically accurate, of course. I thought, there's no way I'm gonna like a vampire movie. I've seen so many, they're all just so dumb. No way. That is until I saw these two films. The original German silent film, Nosferatu, made all the way back in 1922, was directed by F.W. Murnau. It's an unofficial adaptation of Bram Stoker's OG novel, Dracula. Many of the characters' names, as well as the location, were changed to avoid any form of copyright issues. This led to Dracula being renamed to Count Orlok. Of course, Stoker's family sued the film for using the adaptation without permission, and almost every copy of the film was destroyed. I say almost because, duh, there he is. We're able to blissfully see this film anytime we want. But that's kind of crazy, seeing how this is basically the German Dracula, with so many things changed, including the title itself. I've always wondered what Nosferatu meant. The Romanian word has become synonymous with vampire, but in actuality the word doesn't even exist in their language. It was first published in an article discussing Transylvanian superstitions. Some historians believe that the Romanian word was nesuferit, which means offensive, or the Greek word nosophros, which means the plague bearer. They believe the author misheard one of these words and wrote down a corrupted version. Either way, Nosferatu was born, and with it, a legendary tale of horror and dread. By the 1970s, Nosferatu became a bona fide classic in film history. In '78, German filmmaker Werner Herzog sought after the rights, constructing his own version of Nosferatu as an homage to the classic. He stated that it was the most important film to come out of Germany, and that he desperately wanted to make his own rendition for the next generation. And now here we have it, the original Nosferatu and its remake, Nosferatu the Vampyre. Who will win?
Player 1. Player 2. Round 1. Fight!
Now the story of Nosferatu is simple, and for the sake of confusion, I'll be calling the character of each film by the remake's names, as those are the names used in the Dracula novel, for the most part. In Nosferatu, a real estate agent named Jonathan Harker travels from his lovely town of Wismar to a ruined castle in Transylvania. There he hopes to sell a fancy house to the reclusive Count Dracula. After a tidbit of homicidal vibes and tomfoolery, it's revealed to Harker that the Count is an undead vampire, preying on the flesh and blood of the living. When the Count gets a lust for the man's wife, Lucy Harker, he travels by boat to Jonathan's town, bringing alongside him coffins filled with rats. So yeah, Nosophoros the Plague Bearer really suits this type of story. At a first glance, I thought it'd be difficult for me to choose a favorite between the two. They both offer such incredible themes of existential dread. And you know, we all love a feeling like that in our lives. I thought I'd be making a video saying how iconic and timeless the original Nosferatu would be, and how it could never be remade successfully. Surprisingly, this is a rare case where I love the remake. I think what Herzog did with the story was amazing. He took the film and added so many layers to the characters. Something that definitely aids both films are the audio formatting. You could argue that the original is more terrifying and compelling with the lack of spoken dialogue. On the other hand, having dialogue definitely helps convey the story and how the characters feel. It just adds a whole separate performance that we take for granted. Let's look at each character in comparison. While nothing much thematically changes with Jonathan Harker's character, there is one big thing. The ending in the remake is insane. Like, so goddamn insane, I'm not even gonna touch it in this video. But the way the remake ends for Bruno Ganz's Jonathan brings a whole other layer to the film. It ends in an entirely different note that I personally love far more than how the original ended. The character of Jonathan's wife is very refreshingly brilliant in the remake, rather than the original portrayal. Isabelle Adjani knocks it out of the park as Lucy Harker. She adds so much depth to the film, almost taking the center stage as the protagonist in the second half. In my opinion, the original wife wasn't really utilized well. She mainly acted like a damsel in distress. However, in the remake, Lucy acts as a heroine, someone the audience believes could single-handedly end Dracula's reign. In addition, the scenes where she explores the plague-ridden streets of her city was so awesome. Big fan of that part of the film. Alright, so we've covered the two main human characters. Let's address the vampire in the room.
Nosferatu!
In the original, Max Schreck's Count Orlok was portrayed as a man whose sole purpose on Earth was to feast on the living. And look at this guy compared to the remake, okay? Klaus Kinski's Count Dracula. Look at these dudes, alright? Orlok is like this gargantuan Chad with razor-sharp, long claws. And Klaus's has this, like, Gollum look, you know? He's this little guy. He's just this little Gollum guy, you know? And, like, don't worry, he's still a creep, but let's be honest. Modern-day Klaus Kinski's Dracula, he'd be an incel Redditor in the basement, okay? Actually, wait, that's quite terrifying. While yes, in theory, an agent of chaos would be more terrifying. Someone you can't reason with, someone that lacks a soul. But beyond that, Orlok doesn't have a lot going for him. We don't get much character development as the film progresses. He's just this dude that wants to start a plague and get some neck, right? Herzog's interpretation is supplementally interesting. In the remake, Dracula is this sad shell of a man. Someone who acknowledges his eternal loneliness and longs for love. He treats his vampiric existence as a disease, a curse. In a quote from Kinski himself, we see Dracula sympathetically. He is a man without free will. He cannot choose and he cannot cease to be. He is a kind of incarnation of evil, but he is also a man who is suffering for love. This makes it so much more dramatic, more double-edged. This version of Dracula I find to be so much more, for lack of a better term, fleshed out than the original. In a sense, the audience can understand where he's coming from. His thirst for blood prevents him from being able to love someone. When the bestial nature in him kicks in, this makes Klaus Kinski appear almost animalistic at times. A great example is the scene where Harker cuts his thumb. That transition, that sudden turn from Kinski, was so much more felt than in Shrek's. When I first watched the opening credits, I was kinda confused yet shocked by it. A multitude of rows of mummies? Yeah, but what do they mean? On a first viewing, I thought maybe they symbolize the overarching themes of death, something we'll all experience eventually, but in actuality, I think they're Dracula's victims. I believe the rows of mummies to be the people Dracula attempted to love, but his condition prevented him from viewing them as anything but food. In a sort of ritualistic form of self-punishment, maybe he still keeps them with him, somewhere in his old castle, as a reminder to himself that he will only ever be a monster, and that love will never get past his fangs. Something I think that was improved in the remake was Dracula's relationship with Lucy. There's an underlying theme of desire between the two, almost like a mutual understanding. In one of my favorite scenes, Dracula meets Lucy and the two discuss the existentialism of mortality. Dracula asks her to give him the same love she gives her husband. That moment of vulnerability shows Dracula truly is a living, breathing person, just like the rest of us. Granted, he's going about it the wrong way, but he still feels something. As for Ajani's character, she sort of feels something as well. In a quote by the actress, "There's a sexual element. She's gradually attracted towards Nosferatu. She feels a fascination, as we all would think. First, she hopes to save the people of the town by sacrificing herself. But then, there is a moment of transition, and suddenly, her face takes on a new expression, a sexual one, and she'll not let him go away anymore. There is a desire that has been born. A moment like this has never been seen in a vampire picture." I kind of agree with what the actress is saying here. I can't really say that a theme like this had ever been explored or elaborated in the original Nosferatu. Dracula is this otherworldly, mysterious being. It's told in the films that he's able to play tricks and illusions on people's minds. I believe that's why everyone seems to freeze in place when Dracula approaches them. He's hypnotically freezing them in terror, letting them fully know that he's going in for the kill. Surely he could be able to try and seduce a woman. The problem is, there's always that hunger for blood, preventing any emotional connection to form. Think of it like this, alright? You have this peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's Isabelle Adjani. You're thinking to yourself, damn, that's delicious, but wait, no, you want to love this thing. Have a relationship. Wouldn't that be cool to feel loved for once? No matter how hard Dracula would try, that's still to him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and his urges forever make him want to eat it. The fact that I decided to do a stupid analogy comparing Isabelle Adjani to a sandwich just goes to show how much more compelling these characters are for me. I know this video is turning into me just saying the remake is better, but hey, there are things I think they both did superbly well. The cinematography in the original feels so raw. I think the fact that the quality of the print is so poor helps aid to the atmosphere of the film. It feels like something we're not allowed to see. The imagery captures the decaying landscape so beautifully. Not to mention the iconic shots displaying Count Orlok, looming prominently center frame. While the remake also has cinematography that conveys such themes, there's just something about the original that feels so haunting. Something I can say about the remake is that the colors do appear quite vivid in certain shots. Some of my favorite shots in the remake include this mirror scene, which is, chef's kiss, incredible. The way that Dracula doesn't appear in the reflection, yet his shadow does, so good. Another one being the quite literal Last Supper rendition, with the infected rats surrounding them. In my humble opinion, the most impactful part of the remake is its use of music. The haunting chants from its opening credits onwards help aid to the morbid subject matter of the film. It's like a somber death march you're hearing in tandem of the chaos witnessed. While that chant is amazing, don't get me wrong, I found so much symbolism in this particular song that's played twice throughout the film's runtime. The song is called Das Rheingold, written by the famous composer Richard Wagner. It first plays once Harker is making his ascent to the Count's Gothic castle. Das Rheingold, which translates to the Rheingold, has often been played in films during scenes where the protagonists arrive at their destination after a long journey. It's typically used in a triumphant moment that gives an almost ethereal sensation to the narrative. With that being said, the use of the song makes sense in the first instance. Harker is our hero, and even though it's fueled by his greed to make money, he's completed his hero's journey of reaching the castle. The second use of the song, however, is what I find so amazingly symbolic in Nosferatu. Das Rheingold plays a second time when Dracula exits the ship after harboring at Harker's town, emptying his coffins of rats into the streets at night. It's so brilliant how these two scenes are essentially the exact same, just flipped by who we as an audience member deem as good and evil. But of course, life isn't so black and white. Dracula probably thinks himself the hero and the world his enemy. After all, how could life be so good if it's the cause of his eternal curse of loneliness? To Dracula, he's completed his hero's journey. He's made it to the town of Wismar, fully prepared to become the plague bearer in order to be with the woman he loves. Here he hopes to finally get a taste of the love he'd longed for his entire existence. And if not, no matter to him, at least he'll take the world down with him. If you haven't noticed by now, I think I love Nosferatu the Vampyre. There's so much to analyze and appreciate, which is why I can't help but say that I prefer Herzog's remake to Murnau's original. As much as I respect Nosferatu as a true staple in cinema history, I believe that Herzog utilizes the film and builds on its themes, making the characters far more thought-provoking for me. If I'm being honest, I didn't really know that the remake existed up until a few weeks ago, and wow, am I glad I saw it. It's easily become my favorite vampire film, and I can't recommend it enough to you. If you haven't seen it yet, please check out Nosferatu the Vampyre, preferably the German original, not the English version. The English dub is not nearly as good as the German dub. Now I've talked a lot. I want to hear what you have to say. Comment down below, and please tell me your thoughts on these two masterful horror classics. Which Nosferatu do you prefer? And what vampire films do you think could rival it in a battle of comparison? If you haven't given this video a like yet, please, let's do so. And subscribe, my god. I'd love to have you aboard on this channel. I welcome all movie fans. Thank you all for watching. As always, have a good day. Watch a good film. That's been Bill, guys. See you later.